Well, welcome to Unedited, episode 31.
Woo!
It's good to be here. My name is Jordan. I'm joined by...
This is me.
This is him. This is Ethan. So he doesn't like introducing himself. I like to throw it at you almost every time, eh? One of these days you're going to say it. And
We can change it up every
You're
time.
make my life so happy, eh? And so excited.
Oh, wow.
So
That's like something you need, hey?
yeah, exactly. I need that to happen one of these days. But how are you doing?
I'm good, man.
Yeah, that's
I'm
good.
having a blast, honestly.
Oh, that's good.
I can't even tell you why.
You know
So
what?
I'm not going to.
Just enjoy it. Just enjoy the moment. I'm serious. Like, I think that's good when
Yeah.
you're feeling like that.
No, I could tell you why, though. I've been having a great, it's just been a season of, lots of exciting new opportunities.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that just makes me feel, it makes you more tired when you're pursuing more things in life.
Yeah.
But it makes you really satisfied, too, you know?
I agree.
I don't want to have too little to do. I don't want to have too much to do.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm feeling it kind of in the same way.
Yeah.
And I think it's really honestly helped it's made time go quick because when you're pursuing things, you're staying more busy. You have more things that you're looking at, and it's exciting seeing where everything can kind of end up once it comes to its well, not conclusion, but gets to where you want to get it, right?
Yeah. Reach your goals kind of thing.
Yeah. I always talk about the month, and I'm just going to bring it up here.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe that it's January 30th, like 29th today, but 30th, right? Like when this airs.
Yeah.
And it's crazy actually to think about it that way because typically January I find is kind of been a tough month for me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one of those months like I'm the person who loves the Christmas season and just like absolutely eats the whole thing up, right?
Yeah.
And then January 5th or 6th, usually when the World Junior Tournament's done, signals a shift for me that the holiday season's over. So they usually play the final game on like the 4th or 6th, somewhere in there in January. And then the month I've always found kind of a bit like draggy, sometimes difficult, like a bit of a struggle, right? Sometimes, but this year it has just absolutely flown. And I'm trying to figure like what changed. I think it could be a bit of what we're talking about. Maybe I got more busy. I think a big thing too is our weather's been unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it's been a very warm January in
Unbelievable
comparison.
in a weird way.
Yeah, exactly. For the first time, I kind of like it, and normally I like the cold, right?
Yeah.
And but probably a big part too is I get outside a lot more, especially because it is warmer. And
you go for walks like every single morning, right?
every single day. Yeah, almost. And like a couple minus 50s have kept me in the house, but I've also gone on some minus 50s, right?
Yeah.
You just gotta dress for it. Like, I don't mind walking in minus 50 with no wind.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah.
It's just like a freezer, right?
Yeah.
Minus 10 with a 50K wind,
Yeah.
that's cold.
Done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I find the wind plays such a factor in whether I want to go for a walk or not. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do get what you mean.
Yeah.
I'm the type of guy that if I really want to be out, I'm just going out.
Okay.
Like kind of stupidly sometimes, where my wife will be like, you shouldn't go out today. It's way too cold. And it's like, oh, we'll wear a scarf and gloves and toque and put my hood up and you know, but it's part of the fun for me.
Yeah.
But it's because I don't go out every single day for like outdoor exercise in the winter. In the summer, for sure. Like I'm out every single day at some point in the day. But yeah, you know, it's interesting because you're talking about how January can just be a tougher month.
Yeah.
I think that's it's a thing that a lot of people, even watching and listening, could probably understand. And, you know, I think our culture is pretty up on the idea of SAD, like seasonal affective disorder, and how like some people take to like UV treatments or more vitamin D, or, you know, trying to like maintain normal exercise habits to keep your I don't know if it's brain chemicals or hormones or what, but to keep yourself regulated.
I know what
you're
saying. Yeah.
But it's interesting. I find like March is usually where that would hit me more.
Okay.
Because for some reason in March, I'm like, get me outside, but it's miserable outside. And so I get miserable inside. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
January, there's so much happening that I'm just, so maybe that's kind of where you're coming from, is like this January for you, things are going, things are still happening.
Yeah.
Like my January is always pretty crazy and hectic.
So it
and
just kind of
so-
flies in and of itself.
Yeah, it just
in that
goes.
way,
It just goes. Yeah. And then February is like my wife's birthday's in February. It's Valentine's Day. There's things to look forward to.
Yeah.
And then March is just kind of like,
Interesting. That's interesting because for me in March, I'm like, oh, there's light coming. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah.
think I start to feel a little bit that way.
Yeah.
And honestly, a lot of the time it's with different like events and stuff. And like, I self-admittedly love watching curling. Okay.
yeah.
And you got the Tournament of Hearts, you got the Briar, you got the World Championships. That all happens in late February, March.
Yeah.
So I think those little events sort of keep me like a little distracted with like different things to watch in the evening.
Yeah.
And but yeah, sometimes that could feel like it drags though. Like last year in April, it was pretty cold, eh?
Yeah.
And that was an interesting month because you're used to half expecting some spring, but it's felt like spring this week, and it's tricking us. Don't get tricked, okay? Because the 26s are coming next week. I see
Exactly.
and reality will hit.
I always tell people that in Saskatchewan in March as well. People get excited in March when we have plus temperatures, because we will usually get plus temperatures in March. But then I always tell them, it's like, just remember, enjoy this for now. But if you let spring fever kick in, you're going to have a miserable April.
Yes.
Because it's going to be at least half winter.
Yeah. And snow. I find like in those warm months, that's when the snow starts flying, right?
Yeah.
I was getting a filling last week, and my dentist was chatting with me beforehand about different things, and she brought up the weather. And her big thing she said was like, this tricks me because it makes me feel like it's spring right now.
Yeah.
And she says, and it messes with me when we
It
go
does.
back into a deeper cold, right?
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, absolutely.
So don't be tricked.
You know the whole April showers bring May flowers?
Yeah.
In Saskatchewan, the showers are just too cold, so it's snow, right? But it's seasonal rain.
or freezing
it's
ice
just
or
cold.
something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Makes the roads all choppy.
But listeners and viewers, if you're experiencing like winter blues and stuff, like apparently you were just talking with Ashley about Blue Monday. Apparently that's a thing.
Yep.
But like if you're, wanting the days to get longer and stuff, hang in there. Like winter, as a Canadian, we have to acknowledge that as like northern countries need to be prepared for the fact that winters are long and kind of gloomy, but find something that you enjoy, that you like to do, that brings you passion, that gets you excited, something to look forward to. I like to set goals in March when I start feeling especially down. I'm like, okay, I'm really down, so I'm going to set a personal goal. I'm going to bike, 250 kilometers on my indoor bike this month or something, or whatever, like try to make like something that every day I'm like, I'm excited because I'm going to get up and going to do this thing and challenge myself.
And that's interesting because I did that this time.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Nice.
I set reading goals. I set different things I want to like watch, like a movie or two. And I even went to a couple concerts this past week.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
part of me was like, give yourself something to look forward to, something that's going to be like an exciting kind of an event, right?
Yeah.
And it really did make a big difference, actually.
Yeah.
It's kind of giving me something to kind of, well, that's coming up, that's exciting. And then when it's done, you're on like this little high for a day or two.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you just had a good time, right?
Yeah.
So
It's interesting how spiritual rhythms that we see from scripture and how we're taught to live our lives apply to like a broader perspective than just your spiritual life, quote unquote, like the things that we learn, the tenets of our faith in terms of rhythm, in terms of like rest and work and like putting purpose into things. These things like benefit us like all the time.
Yeah.
So like keeping your rhythms, keeping your disciplines, and then like enjoying those things really, really help in times when you feel pretty like, pretty worn out. And
well, for sure. Well, that's good. Good discussion. And you know what? I'm going to transition here to the next segment.
boom.
Let's talk about In My Feed.
In my feed.
In whose feed?
In your feed.
In my feed.
Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I can go first if you want, just to set the stage. Mine's a little bit silly. So if you feel like you want to hit something more serious first or something, it's up to you.
I don't know if mine's serious as much as it's a little ranty. Because
Gloomy.
I like to rant a little bit. So you can go first. Let's have fun.
Does it have to do with sports?
No.
Okay.
You know what? I've challenged myself that we're not talking music or sports in this one. Because that's my natural go-tos, right?
Yeah, we definitely like to get into the topics we like to get into.
It is going to be cultural, but it's
you know
not
what?
going to be those two things.
I'm proud of us because we haven't talked about space in a long time.
Yes.
Probably several months.
Mm-hmm.
And every single week, my feed items have at least like 6 space articles
Are
in
you
it.
taking me to space right now?
No, I'm not going to.
Okay.
Because literally, I was thinking about my feed for today, and I was like, Just gotta rest the space for a little bit. I feel like if I bring it up every like few months, people will deal with it. But you know, I think people get tired of me talking about space. So anyway,
Space is fun, though.
yeah, you want me to go first? I'm just gonna go.
I please want you to go
I'm
first.
gonna be obedient to your request here. Okay.
Thank you.
It's about mutual submission, right?
That's exactly it.
And I
So-
submit to you, Jordan. I'm going to listen to your input. I
Awesome.
respect your authority in my life.
You know, this is all good stuff. Ashley, you got to keep that clip. So handy. So,
In this moment.
yeah. Oh, there we
Any
go.
other time, forget it, pal.
Cut that part out.
Yeah.
Cut that line out. Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. Have you... okay, before I get to the article, I want to set the stage a little bit.
I know you have to set the stage a bit. Eh?
Yeah, and I think it makes it a little bit more fun for the listeners and viewers here. Anybody who's watching or listening, and Jordan,
Yeah.
when you were a kid and you were just like walking around Thompson, Manitoba,
Yeah.
maybe you're in a park or something,
Mm-hmm.
you see something interesting on the ground,
Yeah.
it's an organic material, and you pick it up and start playing with it.
Yeah.
What is that thing? So you're walking like at the playground, there's something organic on the ground,
Yeah.
and it looks cool, it gets your attention, you pick it up and play with it for like a recess or whatever.
Yeah.
What would you be picking up?
Like a wooden stick, maybe?
Yes,
Of some sort?
exactly. That's exactly
A
it.
cool looking sword?
Yes.
Becomes a sword after?
Exactly. The
Mhm.
classic for me growing up was like I was raised on like cowboy shows, and
Mhm.
you know, like my family was like a hunting and fishing family. So if we found one that looked like a gun, that was like the holy grail. you know?
Exactly.
We'd be like, it's a gun.
You take
know?
that home and you keep that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was Ashley, did you ever find and play with sticks as a kid? Yes, 100%. I feel like every kid that like, I'm sure there's kids out there that didn't do this. But I'm like trying to think of who you would be. Maybe if you grew up in like a concrete jungle kind of city, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like, there's no sticks here, you know?
Yeah.
But like everybody growing up would pick up a stick and be like, this is now a ray gun, or this looks like a hand and I'm going to stick it in my sleeve and have it sticking out, you know, or this one looks like a sweet sword with like a little hilt and everything. And like whatever sort of stick you would find, or sometimes you just find a good beefy stick and you'd be like, it's my new staff. Like I'm going to walk with this
Yeah.
for this whole
Yeah.
day. And as a kid blowing out summer days, just like walking around in the bush or something, like you would just, there's limitless opportunities for a stick to become a companion for the day.
We have one in our house right now that Nicole saved from when she was like a little, like under the age of 10.
Yeah.
And it's the coolest looking little thing. And it was her walking stick at the time. And we still have it.
That's so
She
cool,
kept it,
dude.
yeah.
That's awesome. I remember one time, I'm just going to get real with you.
Mhm.
I was an emotional kid,
Okay.
and I very easily attached emotions to objects as a kid, okay? So when I was a kid, I had this one stick I found in my backyard, and for some reason, so don't mock me for this because I was a child,
I know
okay?
where this is going.
It was like my best friend.
Mhm.
Like I was like, this stick is special to me. And I think part of my like emotional development and learning how to like bond with people and like consider significant bonds was attributing bond to something, being like, I choose for this to be special to me. You know what I mean? Anyway, so it was very special. But at the end of my playtime, I had to get rid of it. And then I was like, well, I'm not taking it inside. I'm not going to keep this stick. But like, I just spent like an hour and a half playing with it and like assigning value to it for myself. So anyway, I ended up just being like, I got to go inside. I snapped it in half and threw it away. I went inside and cried.
I was going to ask you who broke it because that's where I thought you were going.
Yeah. I don't like, I knew that I should get rid of it. It was probably at that age where you're sort of like, you're starting to learn certain limitations where you're like, I can't keep every stick that I find.
Yeah.
But at the same time, at like a emotionally vulnerable and formative enough stage where I would still like have an unregulated amount of emotion attached to it. Anyway, so like we all have experienced playing with an inanimate object and assigning value to it. But you know what's interesting? And this is where my feed item comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Say finally.
Finally.
Well, Jordan, come on, man. I was just telling you about my
Well,
childhood.
You know what? I'm just saying what you want me to say, okay?
There's this new movement. I've seen these things before where on shorts or TikToks or reels or whatever, pick your poison. And it really is poison, but pick whatever you have and you'll see people picking up sticks and being like, isn't this a good stick? And people flood the comments and they're like, yeah, it is. That would have been great as a kid and blah, blah, blah. Well, now, fast forward to now, there's this thing called Stick Nation, apparently, where there's over like 3 million followers on an Instagram account. And by the way, You could search for this, viewers and listeners. Just be sensible about Googling Stick Nation. I don't know. Always be sensible about what you Google. But anyway, there's this thing that's blown up, and they, on TikTok, people like to say, food talk or whatever, like they put whatever talk in front of it, like whatever it is. So it's stick talk. So apparently
Stick talk.
it's blowing up, stick talk. And these accounts that are like connected to this stuff has just really become like a cultural moment, you know what I mean? Where people around the world are like sort of re-identifying and finding these sticks where, it looks like an animal, or it looks like there's one that's quoted here in this NPR article called the Log Ness Monster.
Awesome. I love it.
So, things that look like interesting little animals or tools or fun imaginary things. And I just think it's so cool that this is something that's actually like sparked a resurgence, because it represents a part of human imagination and wonder. And like we could get into childhood and stuff like that, but even just across the board, human condition is to find like joy and beauty inside of stuff. Ashley just pulled up Stick Talk, right? Yeah, so she's looking at it right now. It's real, right? It's blowing up. It's going places. Yeah. And I think this is the sort of whimsy that, when we live in times where, even just this morning, I saw somebody posting about, what media you can't trust and who you should be listening to, and how people are sheep, and how there's all sorts of cynicism and intensity and division of these people are this, those people are that. And, trying to navigate that as a sensible person can be very tiresome. And then you walk into something where it's like stick talk.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what you vote, but you see that stick and you see a little dinosaur too. So I'm with you on that,
I love it.
And it's a core aspect of humanity that I want us to hold on to,
I'm all about it. As you were talking there, I was thinking about like exactly what you said. It reawakens a wonder and imagination, almost a curiosity, right? Like,
Yes.
like we're often not curious about things, but I think
Yep.
this is so good because it's a universal experience that many of us at some point in our lives have had. And to go back to that, we could all sort of like entertain this a little bit, and enjoy it and appreciate it. So I'm going to check it out later.
Yeah.
So
it's fun. It's lighthearted.
I like it.
And why not enjoy those things in life a little bit more when it seems like everything has to have such a a hefty price tag for your attention.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know we're covered in snow, but when I go on my walks now, I'm looking for a stick.
Find a good one.
I'm going to find a good one.
Snap a pic. Hey, you can bring it to an episode here, and we can hold up your phone to the camera and drive Ashley nuts by doing something really janky like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I'll play a video.
Yeah. There you go. So, something copyrighted. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
No,
it's
thanks
good.
for letting me share, man.
I
That's
like
what
it.
I think.
I like it. I think it's good. It's an experience that I think most of us could relate with, and I think it's a cool thing. It's lighthearted, and it brings back some. Not only does it bring back some nostalgia, probably for many people, but it's just cool and interesting in general.
Yeah.
So
wonder.
Stick Talk.
I hope that yours is just absolutely gloom and doom now.
No,
I hope yours
mine's
is just the biggest downer.
No,
just like
mine's kind of silly. I'm talking
Okay.
about coffee culture here. Okay.
Ooh.
This is why I was chatting with you guys about coffee earlier, right?
Yeah.
And I noticed something this past week. So my headline says Starbucks announces several changes, including plans to cut out some menu items. And another headline says Starbucks is betting its future on ceramic mugs. Okay.
Ceramic mugs.
Well, here's the thing. Here's where it happens. So on Monday, I was on a day off, and I went to Starbucks, and I had to escape the house because the school was out, and my daughter was having a crazy play date. And I thought, Nick, you're going to handle this great, and I'm going to go up to Starbucks for a little bit and read, right? So I went to Starbucks, and I walked in there, and I saw something that brought an odd joy to my life. And maybe I'm the only person who felt this way, but it brought an odd little joy to my life. And I even took a picture of it. I shared it in my story on Instagram. Only one person asked me about it. Most people probably thought, why are you taking a picture of the garbage in a coffee cup? And I just wrote hashtag if you know, you know. And what happened was Starbucks brought back their cream, their milk, and their self-serve sugar. Because since COVID, they have not put that stuff out. So when you went to Starbucks to get a tea, you have to say, well, can you give me a little splash of 2% in there? But for some people, a splash of 2% is like this. For others of us, we think it's like this. And for others, they fill half the cup with milk. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's been an inconsistency. Like you haven't been able to go into Starbucks in 4 years and pour in your own milk and your own coffee or tea and put your own sugar in, right?
Yeah.
So I took a picture of that and I wrote, if you know, you know. And one person asked me, and they thought I was just taking a picture of my Starbucks cup. Like, are you happy? Because I had a little Christmas, they sold one of the Christmas cups. They're like, are you still happy about the Christmas cup? I'm like, no. I'm like, I could put my milk in my coffee now. I could put my cream in my coffee. It's not a huge deal to me because I've been waiting for this to happen. I kind of thought it was never coming back. I thought probably what happened was during COVID, they realized they save a lot of money because people aren't wasting sugar, aren't wasting milk. They're not leaving milk out there.
It's in their hands. So they can regulate
they
it.
probably kept it like this. But apparently, I talked to the manager and I looked at this article that I'm telling you about right now. And apparently, Starbucks for a while there during COVID went away from the cafe model.
Yeah.
So if you read their Howard Schultz's book about Starbucks, which as a geek I probably did about 10 years ago.
Obviously, I read it.
The idea was Starbucks was supposed to be your third environment. Their idea was to be
The third place.
you got work, exactly. You got home, and Starbucks is like your third place, your third environment, right?
Yep.
And it was supposed to be meant about customer experience. But during COVID, what ended up happening was because they couldn't open any of their cafes, they started closing every cafe basically that didn't have a drive-through.
Because they're just losing money.
Yeah, and I saw this in Winnipeg. I saw it happen here. Actually, here, our famous one, our first one on 2nd Avenue got shut down because there was no drive-through, and they moved it 2 blocks down the street and opened one with drive-through capability.
Oh, that's why the 2nd Ave one shut.
That's why it's gone, yeah.
That one was like the nicest building in the city.
Exactly. I loved it, right? That was my
Yeah.
favorite Starbucks. Even the outside almost like it had a nostalgic Starbucks feel, right?
Yeah.
But they moved it down the street because there was no drive-through. And so what happened, even in Winnipeg, some of the Starbuckses were closing all their seating and taking it right out. And so it was literally a walk-in and pay and leave kind of store and a drive-through. But apparently the CEO now has decided that they cannot go that route because they're taking away their original branding, that they're moving back to a cafe experience, so much so that they offer you ceramic mugs now when you go in. That's why it says Starbucks is betting its future on ceramic mugs. So the other day I went in there to order tea and they're like, yeah, can I put it in a mug for you? And felt weird to me. I'm like, no, I'll take the paper cup, right? Like I'm used to the paper cup.
You said, no, I want to throw out paper today.
Yeah, I want the paper cup, right? but then I on the table, there's little signs on every table now that says like we serve it to you in a cup, and now all refills are free. So you don't even need to have a gold card. You could just get a free tea or a free coffee refill if you take the mug. And
really?
They'll just refill it for you right in the store. That's part of the cafe experience they're trying to go back to.
I'm doing that.
Yes, you should do that. You can go drink 3 coffees with your mug, right?
But I'm assuming they just mean coffee.
And tea.
Not a specialized, like not a latte
not those,
or anything.
No. And not anything with lemonade. So they will do cold tea, but they won't give you like the lemonade part, right? Like the black tea lemonade or the tango
I'm going to
lemonade.
ask for a lemonade latte and see what they do. I bet it'll just blow up their minds.
You know, I bet you that's going to be like
It's
a
the
staple
loophole.
at the store after you order it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, this was an interesting thing to me though to see this happen because I was wondering what Starbucks was doing because I even came across an old message I wrote where I talked about Starbucks being a third environment.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, this is dated. Like this is not true anymore.
Yeah.
Like this is like they've gone the exact opposite way. Like where they just want to get you through the drive-through and get you going, right?
Yeah.
And
you had your Ginkgo jeans on.
well,
or
and
whatever
that's the
those are
thing.
called. Is it Ginkgo or is it Janko?
Janko, I think.
Janko?
I don't know.
I think Ginkgo is a
Ginkgo.
type of tree. Isn't it?
It could be. We're back
Anyway.
to sticks now, aren't
All
we?
right. Sorry. I'm sorry. I just keep on trying to bring sticks into it. Sorry. Keep
But
going.
I'm
keep going.
just saying my life was made happier when I walked into Starbucks. And I thought, this better not just be this location. And I found out, no, it's everywhere. So when you go to Starbucks, the half and half cream's there. The milk is there. The sugar and Splenda or whatever you use is there.
It's the whole meal deal, baby.
I'm telling you, I don't have to
Yeah.
gamble on my tea tasting like pure milk now. Now I control the milk again.
Yeah.
You know, you like some control in
You're
life,
the
right?
captain now.
That's the thing.
Did you say that to the person? You said, "Look at me."
I
Look at
didn't,
me."
but I'm going to go in there tomorrow
Okay.
and I'm going to say, hey, I'm the captain now. And pour my milk.
Dang.
And I bet you the guy or whoever's behind the till will laugh. I'm just saying guy because the manager there is the gentleman who talks to me all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bug him like that. when
They're
I
going
see
to
him.
be like, this guy, that's a power move.
Yeah.
And then when you sit down, you just put both hands behind your head. You're just like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And if it flops, I'm just going to say I got this friend named Ethan who told me to do this. And,
Yep.
and
they'll be like,
I realized it was a bad move.
Who is that?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Especially when you tell somebody the name Ethan, they think of like a 15-year-old little brat at high school somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
Ethan is a young person name now.
Yeah. I'm going to make one last comment on this, and I'm going to end this, and we're going to move on. But I am glad they've gone back to a cafe experience because I feel like the idea behind the coffee shop has always been community, and it should have been community, right? And when I saw them make this pitch towards, drive through, and I understand it business wise, because during the time when we had the COVID time, like, all these places couldn't even have people inside the building, right? So they had to pivot to something in order to be selling drinks and making things happen. Yeah. But I'm glad they've gone back this way, and I'm not even just talking about the self-serve stuff, but I'm glad they've gone back to the fact where it's like, you know what, we want an experience here. We want this to be a place for you guys to visit and stuff, have community. I just think it's a better way to run a coffee shop. And I noticed that the new ones in Saskatoon, there's a new one in Aspen Ridge, which is quite beautiful. I know me and producer Ashley have talked about it. We both like going there. Okay. But it's got a crazy amount of seating. And when I saw them open a place like that, I was like, but isn't Starbucks doing the opposite now? But I guess they announced these changes.
Interesting.
So that's the difference.
I appreciate going back to that model, because when I was in college, Starbucks was, I didn't even like Starbucks necessarily, but Starbucks was just like a very consistent study spot for us. We had one like across the street from our college.
I love that one.
We'd go there all the time. Yeah. We also did Tim's, but Tim's is very much more like an in and out situation. Yes. So it's louder.
Very much so.
Less of
more
a subdued environment.
Yeah.
So we would go study there until they closed all the time. And like, it was
said
very
that big long
normal.
table?
Yeah, that's right.
I love that table.
Yeah, at that location. Yeah. So if you had multiple people, it was much less productive when you had that table full. But
agreed.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let us know if you enjoy hanging out in coffee shops. I never do that anymore. Okay. I would rather take a coffee in my car. Yeah. And go sit in my car somewhere.
I'm kind of in the same boat as you, but it's starting to make a comeback now for me. Lately, I guess I told you I set some reading goals this month. Yeah. So I'm finding myself getting to a coffee shop with a book a lot more lately.
I could not read in a coffee shop. Dude. No. That's insane to me.
Well, it's funny because I found myself thinking like the people 2 tables down are being a little loud here, right? And then I realized you're not in the library, Jordan. You're in a coffee shop, right? But I had that thought one day, like, why are you so loud over there? And I'm like, oh, because they're having social activity.
So would you ever go to a public library to read, though?
Yeah.
Do you ever?
I don't. No.
See, I love public libraries.
That's why I said it like that. But I do like the idea of it for sure.
Yeah.
So
I don't go to public libraries for much anymore. Yep. But I have a library card.
So do I.
And I do take books out, usually on my Kobo though.
Yeah,
so
me
I
too.
can read them at home. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
I use Libby. Yeah. Libby's been a game changer for magazines.
It's called One something. Anyways, doesn't matter. But yeah.
Anyhow.
Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, Jordan.
What's that?
Thanks for that, man.
You know what, Ethan? Thank you for that.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
That was a real stick key topic. So, in the neighborhood.
All right. In the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood.
All right. That was a great transition. I had to get us out of that quick.
Seamless.
Yeah.
Everybody watching and listening
is like
these
quicksand.
guys are
I was like falling. I'm like, in the neighborhood. Let's just jump right into it.
Let's just get in.
Yeah. So we're in a series called Not Alone.
Really?
Yeah. Pastor Louis preached this weekend.
What?
Really good message. Oh. Check it out. No, seriously, excellent message.
Both of them, 3 of them? 3 of them have been very good.
Yeah. Yeah, it is week 3, right?
It is week 3. This is the 3rd sermon we've had on it. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And this past week, he talked about a few things, but what we're going to zero in on for the point of this discussion is he talked about the word confession. And he quoted from James chapter 5, verse 16, which says, "Therefore, confess your sins to one another and pray for each other so that you might be healed. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective." And confession is an interesting thing in the church. Oftentimes, when you come from different traditions and backgrounds, and say you were to switch to a different tradition or background, you sometimes allow that old background. You almost think that I don't do things like that anymore. And you almost can push it away. And here's where I'm going with this, is I grew up Catholic in the Roman Catholic Church. And one of the things we did as kids was we went to the priest to confess our sins. And I got to tell you, I loved confession. I didn't like the idea of going there, but every time I did it, gosh, did you feel good coming out of that room.
Yeah.
Yeah, big time.
Mm-hmm.
And like his name was Father Allery. He'd stand there and I would just tell him, and I just went to town. I put everything out there. Like, I stole this from school. I'm sorry. I did this, and just everything.
Could you list some of them for us here?
Well, I just told you one. I talked about stealing. I talked about saying a bad word. I talked about treating someone bad or something, right?
Jordan.
No, it's all coming out now, eh? But I remember he would give me like, I think it's called penance, but he'd give me something to do. So I'd have to do 5 Our Fathers and 5 Hail Marys.
Yeah.
I don't know if that meant I was good or bad. I never looked into it that deeply. But my job was to go back into the church, kneel, and say my 5 Our Father prayers and 5 Hail Mary prayers, and be out of there. And I remember confession at the very least brought like a weight off my shoulders, right? Fast forward to where, I kind of left the Catholic Church and didn't really go to church for a while. And then eventually when I came back to the church environment in a more Protestant church, I didn't hear a ton about confession. And if I heard about it, it was always personal. It was always something that was a transaction between me and God. And and I almost felt like maybe in some ways that was a reaction from the way the Roman Catholic Church did it to an extent, because it was really trying to reinforce this idea that God forgives, which I 100% agree with, right?
Yep.
And but I think in some ways, though, you read a verse like we just read today, confess your sins to each other. I think there's something powerful about having people in your life that you can do that with, and that you could say things with, be honest, be vulnerable, open yourself up. And as I've done this in my life, I've experienced kind of in some ways what I experienced in the Catholic Church as a kid. I felt like a weight kind of fall. I felt like something lift. I felt like, this is good. I'm talking about this, and someone's listening, and someone who's non-judgmental, who's not, heading to TikTok with this right away, or, you know what I mean? Gonna tweet this out, what I just said to them. Like, you got to find people in your life who are trustworthy and who could, keep confidence and who could like honestly want to help you through it. Right.
Yeah.
But I think this verse is so true because you experience something, I think, when you confess to one another. Have you had any experience with this? Like what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's an interesting aspect of faith. I think I grew up in Protestant evangelical, specifically Pentecostal church.
Okay.
And so my experience of confession was very much, as a kid, you should confess to your parents. You should tell your parents the truth. You should tell them when you did something wrong and stuff, but not really to anybody else. And then as you get older, it's sort of more like you get this, whether it's like overt or sort of like, what's the opposite of overt? I don't know, but the opposite of overt.
Yeah.
You get this message where it's like, just confess to God.
Yeah.
It's between you and God what you've done.
Exactly.
And you tell him, and he's ultimately the one you need clearance from. You need to be right with God.
Yeah.
So you confess to God, and He'll be faithful to you. And then there's also like I think there's a healthy amount of conversation growing up for me about how like you confess so that you can change. Like the point of confession is to actually like go back and to go the other way. To change directions. To reconcile your actions. But I look at faith traditions that do have like set up for confession in terms of you go in and you confess to a priest or clergy, and then they either forgive you or tell you to do some like prayer exercises to sort of like atone or to, as a practice. I think the issue is that on one side, lots of those mainline traditions of faith would see the evangelical approach to confession as weak and like sort of just like, well, who are you even telling? Like, you're just talking to God. It's like, that's not what confession is. Like, you're just, whereas on the other side, the evangelicals would probably look at the mainline tradition of confessing to a member of the clergy as like oh, nice. Now you just get to wash away your, now you walk away with a clean conscience. It's a guilt eraser. And I think there's got to be a balance between them. Because when you look at scripture, like Louis did this weekend, it says very clearly that we should be confessing to one another.
Exactly.
And one another isn't necessarily a member of the clergy.
Yeah.
But it's also like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's
Oh, I'm
more
with you.
nuance to it, and it's a more situational case by case thing.
Yeah.
And confessing your sins is definitely something that when Jesus spoke about it, he was in a culture where confession was a normal part of a faith life.
Yeah.
Like the Hebrew idea of confession would have been part of atoning for your sins, like in the temple and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's moved to more of like a groundwork situation, like a person to person, can happen anywhere. You don't need the temple to confess even. And something that Louis said this weekend that I thought was really valuable is it's like, it doesn't mean you start telling everybody your deepest, darkest secrets.
Exactly.
You know, like you're not just all of a sudden like, hey, guess what? I don't know. I'm trying to think of something like to make a joke out of confessing over, but I don't want to like create a stigma or anything here. But, you know, you don't just necessarily blurt out a bunch of stuff to anybody.
Yeah.
But the idea that this also drives you deeper into community, like to have people where you're like, I would confess to this person. Like this person, these people are the people who hold me accountable in life, who I'm comfortable for them to see me as who I am, and then to continue walking life with them. So if I tell you that I've been struggling with whatever it is, I'm trusting you to walk with me and to help me.
Yeah.
And it's about sharing each other's burdens. And then when you start to make that connection, you realize there's a whole lot of other parts of Scripture that don't necessarily explicitly mention confession that have to do with that way of living, like bearing each other's burdens. You wouldn't necessarily be like, that has to do with confession. But the idea of carrying each other's cares, like how else are you going to do that unless you know each other's cares, right?
Yes.
And the idea of, you know, the evangelical, perhaps traditional approach, I don't know how to label that, but maybe there isn't a label for it. But this idea where you only confess to God, I don't think leaves us as better Christians. I think it's important and good to confess to God.
Yeah.
But at the same time, God knows.
Yeah.
So it's like it's important exercise for you to own things before God and to submit your heart to Him and to have the Holy Spirit interact with you one-on-one. But without each other, like the practical aspect of it gets lost. And I would say even in the other, I'm sorry, this is the last thing I'll say.
No, go ahead.
I would say in the other aspect, in terms of like confessing to a member of the clergy, you also lose the practical follow-up.
Yeah.
Where it's like, is that clergy member watching you live your life and being like, hey man, you confess that you've been, you know, struggling with a heavier load of stress lately, and you'd confess that you hit the drink too hard and you lost control a bit. And I kind of saw that you were, you know, you're still going back every night to the bottle, and I want to check up on you. Like that person doesn't know that necessarily, right? So we need people who are around. We need to open up, and it becomes a bigger conversation than just confession.
Well, and that's the other thing. I was thinking to myself, like, who would want to sign up to be that clergyman? Like that would feel stressful to hear someone's confession all day long about these things and have to carry these things. And for me, in my experience, it was really just a one-time transaction thing, right? And I never heard about it again, never talked about it. I said my prayers and I was gone. Yeah. And I want to stress that there's a tension in all this too. Sometimes we want things to be either or, but maybe more often in life they're both and. And confessing to God is extremely valuable. Extremely valuable, right? And my mom taught me that even when we were Catholics. We kind of like in some ways jumped ship here. Like we were kind of streaming in the Protestant waters a little bit because like she always said, confess your sins to God. You know, like when you sin, say sorry, ask for forgiveness, ask for help, right? And ask God to help you change and to move past this, right? Yeah. So there's 100%. That's good stuff. There's a spot for that. But exactly what you're saying, there's a huge spot as well to confess with each other for reasons of accountability, of journeying together, building community, loving one another, encouraging each other, carrying each other's burdens, as you mentioned. There's so many good reasons for us to have people in our lives, and you just touched on this, but people you can trust, people who can keep a confidence, right? Who have your best interests in mind. Don't confess to someone who's going to hold this over your head for the next 5 years, right? Like that's not what this is supposed to do. You confess to people who will come alongside you in genuine love as I'm going to just use some Christian words here, as a brother and sister in Christ kind of thing, right? And
member of the family.
Yeah. And who actually care for you and want you to get better, and they walk with you in that. And in the times that I've done that and being thankful for people in life I could do that with, like it also, again, brings like a a feeling of like, all right, let's go, right? Like, let's move on. Not only do I feel encouraged, but you feel a sense of relief, and you're happy that there's other people around who could support you on the journey.
Yeah. And you know what? It also keeps us from sin in the sense that sometimes you might just be confused about an issue. There might be a thing in your life where you're like, I'm feeling a complicated mix of emotions about this, and I'm feeling kind of up in the air about it. I'm on the edge of something and I don't know what it is. Like there's moments before you end up, like, what is sin? Sin is missing the mark, right? Sin is a breaking of relationship. Like sin is like selfishness, and so we could get into the definition of sin, but I really like the idea of missing the mark. Like you didn't get it.
Yeah.
Like you fell off. It was, you hit the wrong target, whatever. Like your aim wasn't straight. And that's very normal for all of us as human beings. We do that all the time. But even before it gets to that point, sometimes you just have to, like, you might realize, like, I don't think my aim is right. Like, I don't think something's wrong.
I got a bad feeling on this, right? Like something doesn't feel right in my heart.
And that can be confession. So it can actually keep you from falling under the heel of sin, in the sense of where you've done something now that you really regret, or that causes a habit that's going to be harmful to you, or addiction or whatever. So like even me and my brother got married the same year. And we have it's so good to have each other to talk to about like marriage and stuff, where we can be like, we're in the same stages of marriage sort of like constantly, since we're married in the same year. And there's things where it's like, we'll just open up to each other and confess to each other, not because we've necessarily sinned, but because we've been like, hey, have you experienced this in your marriage? Or like, how does this work for you? Or I've just been feeling this thing or whatever. And it's like, incredible the amount of support you can get from somebody when you just loop them in. Like, don't wait until your life falls apart. You know what I mean?
No, it's good.
Also because, I mean, celebrating with people, you miss out on that if you're not letting people in.
Yeah.
And if you only ever start to let people in when you start confessing, what's your sort of association with letting people into your life? It's stigmatized, right? You're like, well, letting people in is dark and scary, and I don't like it. I don't like turning over the rocks and seeing all the bugs underneath. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you start sharing life with people beforehand, you're celebrating, you're loving life, you get to enjoy each other. And then when things start, you're like, I think my aim is a little off. You can nip stuff in the bud.
Agreed. No, that's good. I really like that. I remember when I first came to when I first came to know Christ, and then I got to Bible college, and people were very open about confessing these things. I found it weird.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this makes me feel uncomfortable, kind of thing, right?
Okay.
But as I started developing these relationships where this happened, I experienced a different level of freedom in some ways. Do you know what I mean? And just a different level of like, perfect. Like this is actually good, right? Like there's like, not only do I have an accountability now, but I have an encouragement. I got someone with me.
Yeah.
So, and what you're saying about like, just your chats with your brother, like it almost prepares you and like helps you, right? In the journey, right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
okay. So I got to watch for, very helpful.
You know who's been a really good example to me is, so I'll say that if you were trying to move on, I'll stop here.
Nope.
But my brother-in-law, so my sister's husband.
Okay.
Anyway, it doesn't really matter, but he's an associate pastor at our church in Kindersley. And sometimes I like going to their church whenever I'm in town, participating and being part of the service. And something that he does that at first when he did it, I was like, why'd you do that? But what he'll do is like in his sermon or in the service, he'll just be like, this week I had a really bad attitude towards whatever, and I confess that to you guys, and, this is how the Holy Spirit's corrected me and stuff. And I was like, interesting, but he's really encouraged me that way, where it's like, there's also like this idea of just living openly, where it's just like, I was off this week, and I want you to know that like God's corrected that in me, and that's like helps people too.
It does.
To be like, hey, if you have a crappy attitude towards your spouse, it's probably something you should confess and move on from, instead of just harboring and holding on to or whatever it is, Yeah. So I've really appreciated his example in that, and like sort of seeing a radical way, for me, like I wouldn't go to church on the weekend and just like confess stuff, but he does, and I think it's really cool. And
that is cool. I like something about vulnerability. We can relate to that, and there's just an honesty with it, I think, that brings us into a deeper level of it helps us to change, helps us to be encouraged or get ideas. So confession, it was a great word. Make sure you check it out. There's so much more we could talk about this today, but we're going to shift gears for a few minutes here. You attended a conference this week, didn't you?
I did.
How was it?
I don't really want to tell you about it.
What was it?
Okay, so there's this organization called Youth Workers Community.
Yeah.
It used to be Canadian Youth Workers Coalition.
Yeah.
And they changed it to Youth Workers Community, which is way better. I was so thankful when they changed it. So YWC, they do a conference across the country every year. I think they do 5 or 6 of them.
Okay.
In like a few provinces and stuff. But they are really just focused on helping youth workers work better with youth. And so it's very open to people who are working in whatever youth working context it might be, or people who are pastoring or working within a church ministry or a parachurch ministry or whatever, but it's Christian youth workers specifically. And this weekend they had their conference, and I was able to go with some of our leadership here, and I was able to even, there's youth groups from across the city and even across the province at this event. There's youth groups from Alberta there even.
Nice.
And able to connect with these people who are really just trying to expand their ability to serve youth and stuff. And there's so many takeaways here. Let me just start here. I'm just going to get it.
Just go through your whole notebook.
No, but one of the things is that I find really encouraging about this conference, I'm just going to give you a general thought about the conference, which is they intentionally lean into and engage with complicated cultural conversations. And I don't always agree with where people are coming from that are presenting on it, but I can engage in it and have a meaningful, constructive conversation with fellow Christians coming from every other sort of denomination, faith tradition, just Christians, right? And hear different perspectives. And it really encourages me with youth ministry, and it encourages me for the future of the church as well, where last year they had a speaker come in who had transitioned and then was in a detransition. I hope I'm using the right words for this, but forgive me if I'm not. But just sharing thoughts about how the church relates to the transgender conversation and what we can be doing better. And lots of it was just very interesting and challenging because I just wanted to hear, And so I walk away with a lot of questions and a lot of an open heart towards dialogue for this, And then this year they were talking about deconstruction, and kind of ironically, the person who's talking about deconstruction, I kind of disagreed with them more than I would agree with them.
But you were grateful for the conversation.
The conversation is what mattered. Yeah. And so to be able to write in my book, that's why I have this little book here for anybody who's watching. If you're not watching,
that's the first thing I commented on when I saw you come back from that. Right? Yeah, I saw you that night.
Yeah. So. They give us a book every year that you can fill out your notes. And so I don't use my personal writing, whatever books that I use for work. I use these because then I know this is 2025 notes. Anyways,
in there. Yeah.
They give you these little books, and just writing down questions.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I would say for that coming out of it for people in Christian faith is there's a generation coming up that wants open dialogue, that wants to have the opportunity to have conversations about things and not be drawing firm lines in the sand in the conversation. We don't need to show up to faith conversations with each other about serious, heavy issues with our stuff already nailed down. And it this is the thing, is that immediately I can hear people saying well, that's too loose, and you got to have some things that are absolute. And it's absolutely, yeah. And for you need to be able to figure out what your convictions are and hold strong to those. But when it comes to conversation with each other about serious issues of culture and faith and the intersection of those two things, the encouragement is that there's a generation coming up that is no longer the future of the church, but is the present day of the church, that wants to have open conversations, that wants to seriously engage and to think deeply about what's going on in our world. There's another seminar that was there that was about digital presence and how we should be using that responsibly for discipleship and how we should be navigating social medias in our ministries and stuff. And all of that is just let's just talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's just have some conversations and engage in it, because all of us are trying to figure it out. So let's not have somebody come in and say, here's the 5 steps to figure out how to relate to the LGBTQ plus community. But instead, let's have an open dialogue about it. And let's have some people ask some questions, hear from different people, and then, leave here more curious and,
Yeah, sounds like a good conference. Sounds
Yeah.
like you engaged a lot. Sounds like you guys, everyone there would have delved into some issues that maybe we don't talk about all the time in the church, right? But
Yep.
you jump into in a moment like that. I told you I'm going to come with you one of these years. I should have came with you this year.
Yeah.
But next year I want to check this out because
Mm-hmm.
I was a youth pastor there for a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't really I haven't served in that role since 2015,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd love to. I don't want to say catch up, but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
just see what's happening more, get a little bit more involved. See, like some of these discussions are fascinating, and
Yep.
being able to hear from other people and also, go deeper into what you believe and figuring out, different things like, with how to treat people, how to love people is an important thing. So it sounds like it was a very beneficial time for you and your team.
Incredibly. And
Yeah.
you mentioning 2015 makes me think that's when I started being a youth pastor.
Yes.
I had done youth ministry previously, but I wasn't like a youth pastor, And over 10 years of youth ministry, it's like I remember when I started in youth ministry, the conversation was the youth group and what youth ministry is doing is the future of the church in 10 years.
Yes.
And here we are. And I'm realizing now, like the young adult community and stuff, like our young adults group, which I'm also the young adults pastor here, is like they've almost all of them have
Yeah.
come through our youth group,
Yeah.
and now they're part of that. And there's people who have even like left young adult ministry who are just people in church that came through youth group. And the reason I say that is because these conversations matter at that time. And something that they emphasized at this conference was like, stop thinking about the youth groups being the future of the church. Like these are the church, like this is the church now. Like, and if we're not
It's good stuff.
ready to be on board with it now, then we're, 10 years down the road, we're kind of stuck. Yeah,
Absolutely.
trying
Absolutely.
to play catch up with where people are at. So anyway, I could
Well,
talk about that forever.
I love it. Thanks for updating us. Thanks for giving us just some thoughts and stuff to look at there. I'm glad you had a great conference, and I'm not joking. I want to come to the next one. 'Cause
Yeah.
I just think it'd be good for me to, experience that and delve into some of the dialogue and just meet some people. Like it sounds like you had a great time. So good on you and your team. And I love this little book. I think it's great that you put those aside because everything's
It's good stuff.
kind of in there for you. Look at that, eh?
Look at that booklet.
Look how neat your notes are, eh?
Look at how neat they are.
Telling
They're
you,
so
man.
organized.
It's just unbelievable.
I'm just really, really good.
You're just going to write a book, Eric.
Like, yeah, okay, relax. All right.
All right, we're going to head into our final segment here. How about you?
How about you?
How about you, Ethan? This is a part where we hear from our listeners, and one thing we've been telling you is leave us your feedback. Maybe something hit you on this talk about confession. Maybe something about that Ethan here shared about the conference he went to stuck with you. Maybe this whole Starbucks thing's really got you as excited as me that we could pour our own milk and cream into the coffee and tea now, right? Like I don't know, maybe
so stoked about it.
maybe it is. Maybe you need to go find a stick, and maybe you want to comment on one that you found recently based on that.
That's right. Embrace
But-
your inner child.
But also, if there's anything you want us to talk about, let us know. Send us a comment. We'd love to look at some issues that are important to you and things that you care about, and we'd love to dive into that. We had a comment last week come in from one of our listeners. I'm going to read it, okay? We were having
Buckle your
the
seatbelts.
age-old debate about cable and streaming service. Like, this debate's been happening since who knows when, right? But
2015.
yeah, probably 2015. That's probably when it started.
That's
But-
when the whole world turned upside down. So
yeah. But the comment comes in and it says, in regards from Ian, in regards to the cable versus streaming service discussion, I don't have cable.
woo.
I have 3 streaming services that I pay for. I used to pay for Sportsnet Plus so that I could watch Canucks games, but I found that I wasn't watching enough games to make it worth it. One problem for me is that because of where we live, there is not one streaming service that I can pay for to watch every Canucks game. Even Sportsnet Plus blacks out the games against the Jets that are on TSN4. That's interesting. I can relate with him on that. I'm stopping mid-comment just to say that I get that. Once I wanted to watch Jets games when I lived here. And I didn't realize that they were local on TSN. And there was a special channel at the time called TSN Jets that only Shaw Cable had, and I was with SaskTel. So I bought the Center Ice package, which is like $40 a month to get every NHL game. Guess which games I didn't get?
Jets.
The only games I didn't get were Jets. So I called my cable company back and said, I want my money back. I want to cancel this. But they couldn't because it's just a product they sell. So once they license it to me and put it in my name, it's mine.
That's
and
insane,
you're
man.
committed to paying for it. So I've run into problems with this before. I feel your pain, Ian. It's frustrating. I'm going to keep reading.
That's just real quick.
Yeah.
That's the goofiness of the sports industry, though.
Yes, I know.
Like they're
I know.
actively screwing over the people who care the most about.
And that's the thing.
Anyway.
If I would have known that, I would have just probably dropped Saskatoon and went to Shaw to get that silly channel, right? Like, you know, and
the
for
fact that
$5
you
a
have to
month
do that.
instead of 50, right?
That's so goofy. Yeah,
It was
okay.
goofy. Yeah, it's not like that no more. Thankfully, TSN has it all across the board. But he said one big problem with streaming services these days is that now every company wants to get their own service. Where we used to get everything on just Netflix or Amazon Prime, now there are streaming services for Peacock, Disney, AMC, HBO, and so many more.
Just Max.
Yeah.
Just Max, not HBO anymore.
There you go. Just Max. That's right. Usually if I want to watch a new show on TV, I could just go to the CTV app or the related channel app and watch the episode with ads, just like I would if I watched it on cable. These days I pay for Amazon Prime, Disney, and Discovery Plus. I love the gold mining shows on Discovery. So, Ian, thank you for your comment. I like that you weighed in on this, and I like that you shared kind of where you're coming from here. It sounds like you've ditched the cable. You've gone with the streaming services, which some of us on this set have done.
I like that you were on my side. That's what I like most about that.
Well, I'm with you on the streaming services. I still just buy the cable with it, right? No, it's an interesting thing. I think what he says is it is quite right. And it is interesting, though, how, like, you know, I remember when the streaming services started, it was just Netflix. And now there's, like, so many options, right? Like, I know people who can even somehow get Hulu. And then I guess you must change your VPN?
Yeah,
or
VPNs
something in
are,
order to make that happen. But like, I know people.
Be careful with VPNs, guys. Not all
Well,
of
for
them
sure.
are
I'm not
created
encouraging you to do this, but I do know people who've done it, right? And it seems like there's a ton of stuff out there now that this is the difference for me is that I guess with streaming you get to pick your content to an extent, and you get to pay for what you want in that way, right?
Yeah.
But there's always little things that end up on each of these things where you're like, oh, I wish I had that, right? Or
Recently for me, it's Apple Plus.
is it?
Or whatever that's called. What is it? Apple TV Plus? Is that what it's called?
think
Is there a
that's it.
Plus or
I
is it
think
just Apple TV?
I think it's Apple Plus, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to have it, but I don't have it. I was talking to my brother about this. It's because they do quality over quantity.
Yeah.
Like Apple is sparse.
Yes.
Like if you're going there for a big catalog, tough for you.
No.
But it's the stuff on there, like Succession, second season is out.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
get me some Apple.
Even
Oh, sorry. Did I say Succession? Different show. Severance is what I meant
Severance.
to say.
Yes,
Thank you,
I saw now.
Yeah.
The thing with Apple too is even their movies, like these are not like low grade movies. Like
No.
these are like movies. Like there's one out right now with I don't even know the name of it, but I saw Brad Pitt was in it and George Clooney, and they just put it out recently. Is that what it's called?
No.
Okay. They just put it out on Apple, and I'm like, this literally skipped theaters, came straight here, but this is like a full production, like a
good show.
full blown movie thing. I remember when Spirited came out, and not to go back to Christmas movies here,
Jordan.
but the Scrooge movie with Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell, same thing. It kind of skipped the theaters.
Yep.
They eventually showed it there, I think, for a week or two, but it went straight to Apple, and like you're getting like big time production there. So I think you nailed something when you said they're looking more for quality over quantity.
They're kind of doing the Apple thing about it, right?
Yeah.
It's exclusive, but when you buy in, you're getting quality product.
Yeah.
So I really like open-ended stuff. So I'll always be like, give me a Netflix over an Apple TV, give me an Android phone over an iPhone, like because I like an option life. I like an open opportunity sort of thing. But
I like the subtle dig you just took at my phone.
No. But hear me out. Because it's a CompuSalt, where I'm also complimenting you in the sense that it's they just do refined well.
Okay.
Like they do good.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever they put out, they're just gonna put attention on it.
Yeah.
Can I just quickly say, Discovery Plus liking the gold mining shows, that's unhinged. I'm
Yes.
sorry, Ian, but you're way beyond. I hate those reality TV shows. They drive me nuts.
I don't even
bro.
know it, so I'll check into it and maybe I'll swing back with an opinion next
It's
week.
20 minutes of staged finding a little gold nugget.
Okay.
Yeah. They're like, we found this.
I'll have
And
to
it's like
watch one.
20 minutes later, they're still talking about a gram of gold. And I'm like, what is this? Okay, so I'm sorry, Ian. I'm sorry.
You're just not there, eh?
He's going to come at me on the weekend at church now.
I hope
but
he does.
I appreciate you,
Get
man. I just don't get that.
Get him,
but
Ian.
yeah.
So, all right. Well, let us know any thoughts you had about today's episode. We want to hear from you. We'll engage with you.
Stick
and,
talk.
Yeah, exactly. Tell us how much you love cable if you're still there.
Nope.
And we will join you next time for episode 32 on Unedited. See ya.
Unedited is a ministry expression of the Neighbourhood Church. Hosted by Ethan Andrews and Jordan McClellan. Produced by Ashley Drayton. Voiceover by me, M. Curry. Watch us on Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook. Or listen on Spotify or Apple Podcast. Thanks for listening.